Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. If you've watched the show, listened to the show, you see two familiar faces here with me. So, obviously, if you've seen the episodes or heard them, you know we're going to talk about transitioning from the classroom into something new. So it's that time of year now. The school year has started. If you did not find that position you were searching for over the summer, you probably made the choice to go back into the classroom and educate young minds. So first of all, thank you for doing that for another year. But if you're still kind of on that journey and you want to try something new, figured right now is kind of the time where you're a little frustrated and you're like, well, now I have some time to wait until I start my search again. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So I have brought two of the best in here with me, Tyrina and Katy, to talk about how you can work on that transition during the school year. So thank you both for being on here and joining me again to talk about these topics.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, happy to be
Excited.
here.
All right, so we'll start off just to, if people haven't listened to an episode before or this is their first time meeting the two of you, you both work with transitioning educators pretty exclusively. Tyrina, you're a career coach. Katie, you have a recruiting company specifically geared towards helping educators move into something new. So you both have the success that speaks for itself. So if people visit their pages, they can see the success stories, get a feel for what you do. But just wanted to get a little backstory from that. So I'll start with you, Tyrina. You've been doing the career coaching for some time now, and almost specifically with transitioning educators. So, what was it specifically that made you want to pursue that path? Was it just you were getting a bulk of those candidates and figured, hey, why not? Or was there something else that made you jump into that career transition phase?
Yeah, great question. So it's a mix. So I'm going into my fourth year coaching transitioning educators. And initially, when I started T Lassiter Services, it was literally for anyone who wanted to transition, which was around like 2021. So almost 4 years, going into my fourth year. Um, but I started to see a shift of transitioning educators gravitating towards my brand. And with before I started T Lassiter Services, I'm also a diversity, equity, and inclusion trainer. And so, I've done trainings. I've actually a lot. Some of the contracts that we get are, educators, as well that need those type of trainings. So, T Lassiter Services just shifted into, helping educators. And I have been, extremely successul with helping educators get into the spaces that I have been in as far as like nonprofit, corporate, or the corporate industry. I have over 17 years of corporate experience, and a lot of the educators that reach out for services and want help in transitioning want to transition into corporate. So a lot of educators, they love working with my company because we have experience in knowing what corporate wants to hear in interviews, what they want to see on the resumes, and so on and so forth. So, it's a good mix. Also, I love helping educators. I love giving back to the industry that has helped me be who I am today. I always run into a lot of the teachers that had taught me back in elementary school and high school and middle school. And I always tell them what I do for a living now. And they're just like, oh my gosh, Tyrina, you're so needed. Education is just not how it was, back when I was teaching you. You're doing amazing work. So I really love, being able to help that industry, transition into something else because they deserve it. And education is the industry as a whole is just not, what it used to be, So
Yeah,
yeah, that's my story.
absolutely. So, Katie, for you, you specifically run a recruiting company focused on that. So I'll let you talk about that a little bit more. But what made you decide recruiting was the right path for you when you decided to pursue something out of education? Because you've been in it for some time. You've probably seen recruiting's not for everyone. So why was it for you? Why does it continue to be for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question, like Tarina said. And similar to her story, it's kind of twofold for me. So, my last position before I left education about 8 years ago was as a middle school principal. And in my role as an administrator, both as an assistant principal and principal, I was involved in hiring. Um, interviewing candidates for teaching positions, for other administrator positions, for the front office positions. And there, in my opinion, is nothing more important, and especially in education, because once you hire someone in education, it's very hard you can't just let people go like you can in the corporate world. There's an evaluation process that's set by the state, and unfortunately, there are a lot of years of documentation you have to go through for someone to not be employed with you anymore. I say that because it gave me a good perspective on the fact that hiring the right person the first time around is critical, not only to a school building, but any organization. You want to save time, you want to save money, and that's like your people are the most important thing you have in a company.
Mhm.
So I always loved the hiring process. When I was in administration, I loved picking that teacher that would just fit my school perfectly because, it's like a matchmaking game. So I always loved that. Fast forward to 8 years later, when I left education and I transitioned into the corporate world myself, I had tons of former colleagues reach out saying, how did you do this? What did you do? Blah, blah, blah. And then I decided that I wanted to kind of marry my passion of hiring and all of that, which is kind of recruiting, into my passion for helping people go through the same process I went through because it was hard. And I was an administrator and feel like I also grew up in the area. I've been here for, at that time, like 30 years. Like I lived in the area where I grew up. So I had connections and I knew people.
Mhm.
But it was still a daunting process. So that's why I created my recruiting company where I help these transitioning educators, and it's very niche in that sense. And I link up with companies that are looking to outsource their hiring and recruiting. So, one thing that I will say, because like you said, Matt, recruiting's not for everybody, but I feel like I also married, like, because I started my own business, I can kind of run it how I see fit
Mhm.
and with the companies I feel like are a good match for educators and also, just make it fit what I feel like is a good model for me. And like Tyrina said, I love just giving back to the community that served me for 16 years so well. And I decided to make a pivot. But I still love, if someone's in that same position that I was, I want to try to help them because there were not a lot of resources for me, at least I felt. Now I feel like there are so many. Like if I had met Tyrina 8 years ago, she could have probably helped make that process a lot smoother for me. So, anyways, I just love being able to help that population and kind of marry it with my love of hiring and finding candidates.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So the teacher, and this isn't to say that all job transitions aren't difficult, but teacher transition into something new seems to be a little bit more challenging, not just because of, and, the three of us have talked about transferable skills constantly. There's probably 6 episodes that you can listen to where we talk about that specific topic, but there's also the deadlines that educators put on themselves. And sometimes it's because they have contracts that they have to renew. So they say, if I don't have something by this time, I've got to sign the contract. So this is my deadline. I have to have something new by then. And it's already tough enough to find a new position without putting that deadline on yourself. So how do the two of you work with candidates to combat that mindset and not put limitations on what's already an extremely challenging process of finding a new job? I'll start with you, Tyrina.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extremely tough market, out here. I constantly remind my clients, if they have a deadline, if they have a time frame, you need to get started immediately. A lot of people that I talk to, I talk to a lot of people in my DMs and, private messaging on LinkedIn. And, they'll reach out just to inquire, about what the process is. But a lot of times they think they have time. Oh, I'm going to wait until March, when school's almost over, and then I'll start. And I'm just like, no, like you want to start now because first of all, and Matt, and you too, Katy, how long the hiring process can be. You have phone screeners. then you're waiting for a call back to see if you got pushed forward to the first interview. And then you have that interview, and then you have an interview with leadership. And then, depending on how big the organization is, or, how it's ran, I have a candidate right now, I have a client right now who just got pushed to the final interview, which is with the CEO of the whole company. And so that's 4 rounds right there that could take over a month, depending on the scheduling.
Yeah.
And so, it's important to know the reality of how long things can take. I do love the fact that people have a time frame of when they want to transition, but it doesn't hurt to get your resume updated, start practicing for interviews and putting it out there so you can get your feet wet in interviews, so that you can practice. You don't have to accept an offer. If you get an offer and hey, take it, take a chance. I feel that it's just super important to know the reality of how long things can take, and you need to start as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Same question to you then, Katy, as well.
Yeah, so I think I actually just posted a reel on my Instagram about this, like start now, like don't wait. Because exactly what you said, Tyrina, and not to be like blunt, but just to put it out there, I feel like you have to throw the timelines a little bit out the window. Like, yes, it's good to have a roadmap and a plan. Of course, that is amazing. But I feel like, just like a lot of things in life, opportunities come when you're least expecting them. And sometimes, I mean, we talk about it all the time in education, right? Being flexible and growth mindset. How many times did I sit in trainings about that? But it's really true in any industry that you have to keep an open mind. Like, and I just want to say this about breaking contract, because I didn't want to break a contract either, right? I was lucky because I was one of those, and I'm going to be honest, like it's very rare that I stopped July 1 and started like August 1st at my new job. That's so rare.
Yeah.
I was so lucky, but I have to say this about education right now, in that transitioning educators have a little bit of a hands up, because the education field is in crisis as far as needing teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you break a contract, honestly, and you wanted to go back, there is a very good chance they would take you back.
Yeah.
I don't mean to, like, again, I think we like tiptoe around that and we're like, oh, don't break contract. Of course, in an ideal world,
Right.
we don't want to break a contract, but that's only education where that even exists. I feel like everywhere else, you give like a 2 weeks notice, and you're on to the next opportunity. But I feel like people just need to be a little bit open to breaking contract. Also, where I live, there are a lot of big successful school districts. I know everyone's not in the same area I am, but like in the Washington, D.C. area, even if I didn't work in XYZ County, I could go to the neighboring one and probably get a job if I wanted to go back. And honestly, just to put it out there, I think you also, when you transition, you never want to burn a bridge, or you want to go out on high terms, which I feel like I did when I left. I still talk to a lot of people that are in our central office about different things, and I truly enjoy networking with them, and they reach out to me about different things and vice versa. And so there is no bad blood. People understand if you just lay it out, like why you're leaving. You don't have to go out, and you shouldn't go out in an unprofessional manner. So even if you're breaking your contract, you can still go out in a professional manner, whereas they would hire you back if you wanted to. And again, just in the state of education, I honestly think there are so many positions where they don't have qualified teachers in them right now that I don't think a lot of people would have a problem if they decided they wanted to go back.
Right.
So that's just kind of keeping it real, like, because I feel like people always talk about like breaking contract, which again, if you don't have to, don't do it. But companies, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, they don't work in the same like September or August to June timeframe. That's not their fiscal year.
Right.
So
Right.
it doesn't match up with education.
Yeah.
So just keep
Yeah.
an open mind, even though I know it's hard and it's your professional career, obviously, but a good opportunity might come along in February
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it might be silly not to take it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just add something about that too. I've had a couple of clients that were, they've already acquired services. I'm coaching them through interviews and, updating their resume. And they have, shared with me because, I've built a rapport and trust where, a lot of my clients, they're very honest with me about what's going on with them. And sometimes they don't have supportive administration that support them through their transition. I recently had someone that asked me a question and say, hey, if a job application asked me, for like a recommendation letter, from my superior, and my, principal isn't super supportive of my transition, what should I do? And Katy, you may have some insight about this too, but what I suggest for them, I say, you know what, right now, start thinking about other leadership that you can get recommendations from.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I went through this when I was leaving as a principal. I had to reach out to a couple people that I felt I could confide in, and it was not my current supervisor, who I had a great relationship with, but I don't want to say it's strategic, but a little bit it is. You need to protect yourself at the same time. So I reached out to when I was an assistant principal. It was the principal at the time at a high school where I was an assistant principal. I reached out to him. I confided in him because he was someone I really trusted, and I said, John, can I as a reference for, X, Y, and they did call him. And I think a lot of companies also understand why you wouldn't want, I actually probably wouldn't put it out there to my, I mean, I would feel weird about that too, being like asking my principal, because teachers are good people. They don't want it to seem like they're leaving. And some people aren't like I wasn't at the point where I would have stayed if a good offer didn't come. It wasn't like I couldn't do my job. I didn't want to necessarily do. I just wasn't. My heart wasn't 100% in it, and I
Mhm.
knew I needed to make a change. But at the same time, I wasn't like all out on it, and I think I still probably could have done a good job. So it's kind of like you do have to weigh like asking another person. Maybe it's even like a teacher that was your mentor or something like that. Companies really just want to hear from someone that has worked with you, that you're professional and that I mean, so I think that's a great point that I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
Because it
it's
is
starting
kind
to
of
come up
tricky.
more often than
Oh,
before,
interesting.
Yeah, so
I can see
I just
that
wanted
though. Like,
to.
if as a building principal, if someone came up to me and said, I'm trying to leave, I would not be happy. I mean, I wouldn't be happy about it. I'm not going to be
Yeah,
like, oh,
because maybe it causes more work for you on the
a
principal's
hundred
end.
percent.
Yeah.
And I know
But
like
I
yep,
I understand both sides, and I tell my clients like you got to put yourself first.
now I would
You
exactly. Now I
know?
would have been supportive, but like I don't want to spend a ton of time like helping you out because I got to run a school. So
Right,
like you
Yeah.
also have
right,
to keep in mind that when you say like admin's not supportive, like of course they're not going to, I mean, of course I would hope they'd support you, but they're not going to be like, rah, rah, let me see what I can do
right,
on my weekend to
right. Because
help
now
you.
they're like, oh, I got to find you a replacement for
Right.
you.
That's what they're thinking about. Is like the parents are going to be
Well,
emailing me.
that I know we have to get to other questions, but
Yes.
sorry.
No
But
worries.
this is just this is something that comes up so often. So
Mhm.
I wanted to bring it up while I had you guys here. But like I that's another reason why I say you need to put a frustrations ear. I feel like they get more frustrated when it's like when it's last minute, especially if it's not
Definitely.
in your contract to have to give them a certain time frame. Like you can do
Definitely.
like 2 weeks. I've had a lot of clients that say, I say, do you have to give them like 60 days or 90 days? And some are in situations where it's like, no, it's not in my contract that I have to give them a time frame, but it is standard in corporate, to give two
Yeah.
weeks.
And
And
I'd
so that's
also
what I
say the
call this
last
this.
thing is if you do approach your administrator, make it clear, like, I am still going to give 100% in this role.
Right.
I'm not going to take, I'm going to give 100%. I am looking at some other options, be very upfront, but don't like make them still feel confident that you're going to do your job to help, your classroom and your kids.
And I would hope, one last thing, I would hope that administration, anyone on an administrative team, principal, assistant principal, teacher leads, that they understand why you would leave.
I think most do.
Like, it's
honestly.
so stressful. So like teachers are burnt out.
Yep.
I would
so are admin.
The mindset of
yeah.
I understand. Like, I understand why you're
yeah.
leaving, and let's just have a conversation maybe about how I can be supportive of your transition and make sure that you are still 100% here until you find, until you actually transition.
And I do feel like probably 95% of administrators would be supportive if approached in the right way at the right time.
Yeah, I do have more stories about them being supportive than the latter.
Good. That's good to hear.
Which is good. So yeah.
So I'm going to combine the next two questions just because we've kind of talked about how to stay motivated without setting that deadline on yourself. But I think we've all said before that job searching is a full-time job in itself. And Tyrina, you just alluded to the fact that educators are already burnt out. So they're trying to do two things at once, maintain the classroom, give their all to the students, while at the same time addressing their own personal needs for a new position. So, for you as a coach, Katy, for you as the recruiter, what are some of the ways that you work with your clients, your candidates, and get them to that mindset where they don't feel like, all right, I'm done teaching. I still have papers to grade. I still have so much else to do. Let me give myself 3 hours to job search. And, now it's 9 o'clock. I'm already exhausted. Time for bed. I forgot to do some stuff. How do you try to coach on that time management and not add to the burnout?
So everyone knows their bandwidth, and, some may have the type of home life where they can just sit down for 3 hours after grading papers and, job. But what I always tell my clients is, yourself. I'm not going to put more pressure on you to apply. I do suggest that you do something towards your job search every day. So something that has been implemented with T. Lassiter Services is that I have a career support department now, where after my clients' resumes are done or whatever services they've acquired from us is completed, they now have additional support until they transition. There's no time limit on however long it takes you, because it does take some longer than others because they don't have the type of life where they can apply as much as they want. And, with, transitioning, it is a numbers game. The more applications you, turn in, the better chances of you getting interviews, and getting interview invitations. So, you have to know your own bandwidth. You have to know what you can do, because I don't want you being burnt out as a teacher to, filter into your, application process and your transition. Mm-hmm. So because we have a continued support mailbox, and with this mailbox, you can literally submit the resume that we did for you. You can, put in the email, the job link, and we just have a conversation. I hop in that mailbox every now and then, but I have a team that runs that mailbox, and you literally can ask any question towards your, job search. If you want us to help you fill out an application, because this is brand new to you. You don't know how to answer these type of questions. Or if you want us to just double check your resume against a job description. I feel that kind of support is needed a lot, because 99% of the transitioning educators that I work with have never done anything outside of education. Right. And then also half the battle too is deciphering the job description. Mm-hmm. They're like, what do they mean by this? And it's a lot of corporate jargon, or corporate language. So we're helping them do that too. But I feel that everyone knows their own bandwidth. You know what you can do, but do something towards your job search, even if it's getting up, maybe an hour earlier, before you go to school, and just saving jobs, or emailing my team saying, hey, I just wanted to send this email, before I got to school. Can you just look over this, and then I'll apply when I come home?
Mhm.
But I do not try. I try not to put a lot of stress or pressure for my clients. Like, you got to apply to 10 jobs a day.
Yeah.
That's not feasible for most teachers.
Right.
They're exhausted. But do something.
Yeah.
Not like, just do something towards your job search daily, regardless of what it is. And I promise you, it helps. It really does.
How about you, Katy?
Yeah, those are great points. I have two additional points that I'm thinking of. So one is use, like, a practical tip that worked for me was to use pockets of time, even if they're very short. So, like, I sat in the car line at that point for 30 minutes, and I would get on my phone, get on LinkedIn, or send a couple emails. You would be amazed at what I would do, because it's a quiet car all by myself, and I'm sitting in a car, literally sitting in a car line. Whereas normally, I could be listening to a podcast or just sitting there listening to music. But use those little chunks of time as a teacher and a parent. If there are parents out there, you have those chunks of time where you're sitting at ballet and you're just sitting there, like, of course you want to be engaged, but, like, if there are pockets of time where you're just waiting for pickups, or, like, use those pockets of time that you have, because whether it's 30 minutes or 3 minutes, you can do so. You can save a job. You can do those things like Tyrina said. And then my other suggestion is oh my gosh, now maybe I forgot. Oh, I know what it was. It's going to go into a question later, but networking. Make sure, like, make sure you're contacting people in a smart, strategic way, not just throwing random email, like, messages out there to people you don't know, which could be helpful if you have a ton of time. I mean, it's not going to hurt, but, like, that's where we'll talk about later the importance of networking, but it's like who you're connecting with. Sometimes you just need an in somewhere to get your foot in the door. Then that's going to present an opportunity for a job. I feel like I'd love to look up the percentage of jobs that come from a referral or networking, because I'm sure it's very high. So anyways.
It's extremely high.
Okay, thank you. I'm like, you probably know.
In this job market, it reminds me of when I graduated college. Like, I graduated college 2007, 2008. Horrible time for me to look for a job, because the market was just, you guys know. But yeah, networking. Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about it later, but yeah, networking. You just applying is not enough.
Yeah.
It's just not.
It's not.
Right now. So yeah.
Yep.
Great segue. Let's talk about networking. And the first thing I wanted to talk about with that is, the easiest way is to build your brand. I'm no stranger to that. I post obnoxiously on LinkedIn almost, but it's to build who I am. People get to know who I am. I get connections from that, genuine connections. Two of them sitting here talking to me right now because of that. So it's a great way to do that. But one of the things I've seen, and I know educators can be wary of, I had no clue how to use LinkedIn when I was in the classroom. So now they want to get started on posting. They want to talk about their transition out. How do you encourage them to do that without portraying their role as an educator in a negative way? Because, at the end of the day, we do still need passionate educators. And there are still a lot of educators who are very much wanting to stay in the classroom and do that. And even if you're looking to get out, that doesn't mean you hate teaching, but you don't want to show that in the message by saying, hey, I want to get out of teaching. People think, oh, well, they hate their job. It's probably not the case. They just want something new. Katy, like you said, your heart wasn't 100% in it. So how do you encourage them to post, to network without shining any negativity on the profession of education?
Yeah. So yeah, shout out to LinkedIn, because I wouldn't have met you two if it wasn't for LinkedIn. But it's I know LinkedIn is a new playing field for a lot of teachers. They've never been on it, or if they were, they have an account, but they just, never used it. Really didn't use it much. My rule of thumb, don't say anything negative, as far as your transition. That's the first thing. You can give your opinion, but you can give it in a good light. I do a lot of coaching on networking on LinkedIn as well. I offer LinkedIn networking services, and LinkedIn optimization services. So most of the time, they do need help with figuring out like, what should I post? What should my LinkedIn page look like? What kind of messages should I send to network and connect with people? And so what I normally tell them to do is, you are still passionate about education. So talk about that.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Um, of course, you want to talk about the transferable skills you have for what you're trying to get into. So how about you tell some stories, from your education experience, instead of saying anything negative on LinkedIn about why you're leaving. And as a coach, I do post that teachers deserve better, but it's not in a negative light. It's more so, you can use the number of years that you've been in education in a different field, and you can even still stay in education. You can
Yeah.
be a corporate trainer. You can work in the ed tech field as a customer success specialist. And what I tell them, I say, you ever had a ed tech rep come to your school because they wanted your district to acquire their education technology and or curriculum? You could do that too.
Yeah.
You could be that person. And so when it comes to networking on LinkedIn, you want to make sure that you are not saying anything negative, but just making sure that you are posting or resonating with posts that still express that you're passionate about the field, but you just want to do it outside of the classroom.
Yeah.
There was one other thing that I was going to say. It'll probably come to me, but it's just super important for you to. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Also, make sure that you're connecting with the right people. You do not want to connect with people that are always posting something negative about transitioning out,
Mhm.
because that if it resonates with you, okay, that's a whole nother conversation. But the way that LinkedIn is set up, most of the time when you are reacting to someone else's post, people can see it unless you have certain privacies set up on your account. So all in all, navigating LinkedIn can be tough. It's a professional social media network, but you want to make sure that you are professional, and you're having the right etiquette on this type of app, because I have seen some crazy posts. Sometimes people treat LinkedIn like Facebook.
Yeah.
Like, you can post pictures. I love how LinkedIn is now transitioning to videos. I'm sure you've seen videos and stuff, and I love that because I'm going to start posting videos. But you want to maintain that professionalism. I've seen like people argue back and forth on posts too. Like, you have to be careful. It's not Facebook, it's not Instagram, it's not TikTok. It is very similar to those, but you have to be careful because it is still a professional platform, and the companies that you want to work for can see, what you're doing.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. How about you, Katie? How do
I
you?
don't know why I dropped out. Something happened with my computer, but I was like, oh. So, okay,
Yeah.
I'm back. Hopefully, I'm not going to repeat anything Tyrina said, but like just a couple points to add on. One, I was going to say the same thing, like it's a professional networking space. So, which the teachers don't now, I feel like a little bit more, but like I've seen school systems and some of my former colleagues posting things about school systems, but they don't, a lot of school systems don't use it. So, like, just
Mhm.
keep it so teachers are unfamiliar, is what my point is. So, keep it very professional. I would not, if I was a current teacher or administrator or whatever, I probably wouldn't advertise it out there that I'm trying to leave the profession. That's just not professional to your parents, your students. Like, it's just not a professional thing to do.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind that it is a professional networking site. Along the same lines, like I just noted, have been noticing this recently, like put a professional looking picture on there. Even if you put your school picture, like that you have in the yearbook, like that's what I used for so many years because that was but put something professional, have a picture or whatever. And then my other tip is if you don't want to post necessarily and make a post, explore direct messaging. And you might have already said this, but like pick out some people to connect with and don't have a big ask for them. Um, and I'm just going to share this one thing that I'm not kidding, just happened to me. A mother reached out for her daughter who is a transitioning teacher. And I'm like, no, don't have your mother write a recruiter.
Oh,
Like,
that's new.
that is
Wondering,
new,
but
right?
you
That's
can
the,
tell
I was
mothers
like,
that, Katie, sometimes they will do it because they think they're
they're
doing,
helping.
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, does this poor person daughter even know? I was like, more, I haven't replied yet because I'm just like, I don't know even
Oh
what to
my
say.
gosh, that's so
But
funny.
if you're gonna DM, just keep it quick or just like observe for a while, get the feel of the
Yeah,
platform,
yeah,
add
yes.
some comments that are meaningful,
Mhm.
but like,
Just like repost, maybe just repost
yes,
and
exactly. But
comment on
something that's
people's things just to get a
positive.
feel. Yeah,
Not like how underappreciated teachers are and all that. Like we
Right.
know that,
Yeah.
but that's not how you want to present yourself,
right.
to be quite honest, like you said, Tyrina. So just be
Yeah,
very
no, that's a
mindful of
great point.
that. But if you don't want to post, maybe explore like getting to know someone and then sending a DM saying, "Hey, I really am your content and like what you have to offer. Thanks so much." Like just start with like a, and then you can continue to follow on and build relationships, kind of like the three of us had to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know you have a heart out, Katie. So I'll pose the next question to you first, and then as you need to, feel free. But we're still continuing on with networking. It doesn't have to just be limited to LinkedIn, to social media platforms. There's a lot of in-person networking events that can be done within the community. Mixed results. That's what I always tell people, that if they say, "Should I do this?" If it costs money, if you have it, if you feel comfortable spending it for that, that there are benefits to them. But walking in, you can't just say, "All right, I'm going to this networking event." You kind of have to have a plan going into
Yeah.
it, like you said, with the message that you're sending. So first of all, don't bring your parent with you to network for you. But if you are going to these things, how do you encourage people that you're working with when they are networking? Some of the things that they do
Yeah.
online that they can apply to in-person events too.
Yeah. So I will say some of the most powerful things I did when I was networking were in-person meetings with people I knew from my community somehow. And we had coffee, and it was, again, people I knew. So one of them was actually my realtor that we had used twice. So I said, "Hey, can we meet for coffee? Because I'm looking to transition into the corporate world." And he was like, "Absolutely." And so again, it's just, even though I didn't want to be a realtor, but he knows people who know people who, it's like that's what networking is.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine from high school who's the CEO of it was at the time when SEO was like just getting out there. He did a startup and I met with him again just to talk about like what positions should I, like, what do you have at your company that you think would be good for someone like me? And then the last person that sticks out in my mind was a girlfriend of mine from college. We met, like, again, we were friends, but confided, "Hey, I'm looking at transitioning out of the education world and into corporate." And she said, "Oh, have you checked out a couple of these job boards?" Because she was in HR. And I'm like, "No, I've never heard of those." And that's actually where I found the posting for the job I ended up getting at the nonprofit organization. So just when you don't think, like, it's just really connecting with people, even if it's friends that don't necessarily know you're looking to get out, but like, because you can be out saying, "Oh my gosh, I need to get out of this job, blah, blah, blah." But really, that's different than having a professional conversation with someone like, "Hey, do you know anyone that's hiring?" Or "Do you know, XYZ person?" Again, like just that's kind of how doors open. And like you said, the market is crazy right now. So any connection or in you can get, even if, again, I didn't think I was going to be a realtor, but my realtor helped me kind of navigate. He'd been in the corporate world. I say, like, take advantage of things that are free that that maybe they just didn't know you were interested. So they're not just going to share information with you. So
Right.
again, it's just kind of planting seeds in different gardens and seeing what kind of grows.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I just to piggyback off of Katie, I totally agree. When I was in corporate, LinkedIn was not how it is right now, and it really was on top of having the skill set, practicing for interviews, having an updated resume that shows the skills for the job. In-person networking was the thing. It really, really was. And again, a lot of educators, which I think is funny, a lot of educators are really shy about networking. And when I first started helping educators, it kind of blew my mind. I'm like, you talk to people every day. You're, and I mean, I know it's most of the time it's children, so maybe that's what it is. But I mean, you talk to administration, you talk to other teachers. You went to school for this. So, but I know that networking on LinkedIn, maybe is more intimidating for them because they want to make sure they're doing it right. So I totally understand that. But again, because I come from the old school networking in person, social media, when I first started my career, I was 17 when I got into corporate. So I was in college while I worked. And so it is extremely fun teaching my clients how to network in person. Like, this is what you say. We also practice our elevator pitch. Me and Katy, we talk about that a lot. You have to make sure that you're practicing. What if somebody comes up to you and say, hey, how you doing? Tell me about yourself,
Yeah.
just like they do in interviews. So you have to make sure you have that good formula for when you network in person or on LinkedIn, and knowing what to say, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like reading the room and knowing how to change that parts of the elevator pitch up too.
Yeah.
But networking on LinkedIn, I mean, as far as on LinkedIn, you can join groups. You can just search for groups. Like if you're transitioning to customer success, there's customer success, support groups, or project management. Making sure that you're practicing your elevator pitch, maybe having some scripts already on a document that you can copy and paste and just fill in. Do that for my clients as well. And then when it comes to in person, yes, go to community events even if it's not like a job fair, go to community events, introduce yourself to people. You would not believe how many people I've connected in person, saying, hey, one of my girlfriends, she works just like you said, Katy, one of your girlfriends, one of my girlfriends, works in marketing. Let me introduce, my client to them, and they can just have like a brief coffee chat, even if it's virtual or if it's in person. But networking is super important, whether it's in person or, online. And honestly, I wish LinkedIn, or we had the socials when I was, really, deep in my career or starting my career. Do you know how many people I could have reached out to at one time?
Right.
Like, you can send direct messages and connect with so many people at one time on LinkedIn. When you're doing it in person, you got to do it one at a time,
Right. Yeah.
So I tell people that all the time. I wish the socials were around when I first started my career. I probably would be like a president of, I mean, I'm the CEO of my own company, but I mean, like, the trajectory of my corporate career probably went so much
Taking on.
faster,
Yeah.
than it did, So
Yeah.
networking, you got to do it. You got
Yeah.
to get out of your comfort zone. You got to do it.
For sure. For sure. Well, as is usually the case when I have you two on, we have organic conversations and we run long. So I want to make sure that you both get to what you need to do today. So this is probably part one of I don't know, 5-part series that will eventually
Oh
do when
yeah,
we're all
I
said and
have
done.
so much more
But yeah,
that
we're
I could talk
scratching the
about.
surface. So maybe we'll put something on the calendar for like right before the
Yeah,
winter break so that we
That
can
would be great.
start touching into more. So
Yeah.
we
that's a
have
great
more
idea.
questions that we're going to get into and discuss down the road here. Before I let you go, and I'll start with you, Katy. Take some time, pitch your company, where people can find you, where they can connect with you, and anything else that you'd want to share that they.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. So my company's Recruit Ed Talent Acquisition. My website's Recruit Ed LLC, like it's recruitedllc.com. And I'm on Instagram, Recruited LLC. So feel free to connect with me either way, or on LinkedIn, Katy Garvey, Recruit Ed, both of them. But would love to connect with anybody.
All right, go for it, Tyrina.
And my company is tlassiterservices.com. We are a full wraparound career transition company, from resumes, interview prep, help with applications, post you getting a job offer, salary negotiation. I mean, literally, we help with everything that you need. And even if you need help with that, we have services for that as well. You can find me on LinkedIn at Tyrina Lassiter. You can find me on Instagram at Ed Transition Navigator. I'm also Ed Transition Navigator on TikTok as well. And I reply pretty quickly because I do this full time. This is not, I don't do this, part time. When I decided to help educators, I am doing this 100%. So definitely reach out. We have a lot of free things on the website too, downloadables. And if any of you have any questions, even if you're just getting started in your transition, please don't hesitate to send me a message.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you both. Like I said, this is the first of many times that we'll be doing this. So stay tuned. If you've been watching, listening, appreciate you stopping by. Make sure you're connecting with all three of us, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Matt.
Thank you.